When is the last time something stopped you completely? Not in a bad way, not in a my car won't start and I'm late kind of way. I mean, stopped you the way the universe occasionally taps you on the shoulder and goes, "Psst, hey, you, seeing this?" Because I think we walk past those moments constantly. And today, I want to stop.
You're listening to Unbound Off Script. No outlines, no safety nets, just Beth Curry talking about whatever the hell she wants, or whatever the hell you've asked her to uncover. It's unfiltered, it's unpredictable, and it's officially started. Pull up a chair.
Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back to Unbound Off Script. I'm Beth, and this episode is a 2-for-1, which I guess sounds like a grocery store deal, but I promise it's more interesting than that. At least I think it is. We'll see. We'll see what comes out of my mouth here as I read my scratched out point form notes. So this is coming off the back of something I talked about at the end of season 3, where I got into finding awe everywhere. Awe. AWE. In the massive things, in the tiny things, and even in the things that trouble me, right? That episode hit something in people. I heard from quite a few of you, and 2 listener-submitted ideas landed that I couldn't separate because they're actually the same conversation, I think. They're just wearing different socks. So the first, like I said, is about awe. You know, the real kind, the kind that isn't aesthetic or performative. It's that kind that just kind of quietly keeps you sane. And the second is what I'm calling the files. You know, strange stories, unexplained things, tales from friends, listeners, things I've read about, things I've witnessed firsthand. Stories that end not with a tidy conclusion, but with a bit of a shrug and a that's genuinely weird and I don't know what to do with it kind of way. And the reason I think they belong together, awe and the unexplained use the same muscle. Both require you to stop demanding an explanation, right? Both ask you to kind of sit in that uncertainty and find it interesting instead of threatening. I do that naturally. Some people find that unsettling about me. I find that unsettling about them. So let's get into it. I want to be upfront about something. When I talk about awe, I'm not talking about the wellness influencer version, okay? I'm not talking about like lighting a candle and writing in a gratitude journal about how the sunset was pretty. I mean, do that if you want to. No judgment. It's healthy. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the kind of awe that roots you. Okay? The kind that doesn't require good circumstances or good lighting or a particularly cooperative mood. It's more the kind that shows up uninvited in the middle of something hard and just reframes the whole friggin' thing without asking your permission, right? I want to walk you through the different flavors of it because I think people have kind of a narrow idea of what awe looks like. You know, they think it's mountains and sunsets and babies laughing. And yes, fine. Those absolutely count for sure. But awe is not precious. It doesn't require a scenic backdrop. It shows up in the strangest places if you're willing to notice it. The enormous things, absolutely. Oceans. When I stand with my feet in the Pacific Ocean and I'm looking down at the sand and I'm looking at like specifically in, let's say, Southern California, right? LA, beach cities. I look to my right, I look to my left, and it's just endless beach. It's sand and the sand is so deep before you like get to the houses and everything, and it's just like there's just so much sand there, and you think of how tiny one little piece of that sand is, and then you think about the ocean that you're looking out at and how massive it is, and you're just like this one person standing there. And then you consider the size of the earth and all of like, this is what I mean, okay? The enormous things. Mountains that were there before anyone had a word for mountain, right? The fact that the universe is like 13.8 billion years old, and you and I are here right now in this absurdly thin sliver of time, having this conversation. There are stars in the observable universe that died before our sun existed. Like, wrap your head around that for a second and tell me your Tuesday was stressful. I mean, it was, I know, but still. I think about deep time a lot. The geological kind, where you're looking at a rock formation and someone tells you those layers took 40,000 years to build. I live on the Niagara Escarpment, so I see this kind of stuff. I see the landscape and the layers and layers and layers. It's amazing to me. So, 40,000 years to make a rock pretty, and here I am, impatient when my coffee takes 4 minutes. The scale of it, I think, is genuinely corrective, right? Like, not in a self-flagellating way, just in a, oh, right kind of way. Um, the small things too. I talked about a seed turning into a tomato. The way that bread rises, not just that it rises because of living organisms doing exactly what they're supposed to do if you treat them right. There's a metaphor in there somewhere, but I won't belabor. The geometry of a snowflake. I've said this before and I will keep saying it. Snowflakes are geometrically unreasonable. Six-fold symmetry, occurring spontaneously in nature. Every single one is different, and most of them will never, ever be seen by anyone. They'll land in a field at 2 a.m. and melt before dawn, and nobody will know that they were there. This is awe. The universe made something that precise and that temporary and didn't require an audience. I find that beautiful in a way that's hard to articulate. Dogs, not a fan. I was attacked by a dog when I was 4, had my eyebrow bitten off, whatever. It's okay. I'm all right. I can appreciate dogs, specifically the way a dog looks at you after you've been gone for 4 hours. A lot of my friends have dogs. They've told me about this. I've seen it too. Not 4 years, 4 hours. And they look at you like you just returned from the war. That level of uncomplicated love should not be possible, and yet there it is, right in your kitchen, shedding on everything. The fact that your heart has been beating this whole time, through this whole episode, through your commute, through your sleep, through every moment you've ever had, it just kept going without your input, 60 to 100 times a minute, roughly 100,000 times a day. You never had to remember to do it. Your body just decided you were worth the trouble and just got on with it. I find that moving every single time I think about it. Every time. The in-between things. Here's one that took me a while to name. The awe I find in synchronicity, okay? Not in a mystical, the universe is sending me signs way, though I'm not ruling that out either, but in the sheer statistical improbability of how certain things line up. You think of someone you haven't thought about in years and your phone buzzes with a message from them. You're in a city you've never been to and you run into someone you know. Maybe you're having the worst week of your life and someone says exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment, not because they knew, but because they just did. The timing is impossible and it happens anyway. I'm not telling you what that means. I genuinely don't know, but I refuse to call it nothing. There's also the awe I find in human resilience, which I've talked about at length and will keep coming back to because I find it one of the most consistently staggering things I encounter or that I've been through myself. People who have been through things that should have ended them. Not just survived, rebuilt, changed, become something that the before version of them wouldn't have recognized. That's not small. I see that as one of the most extraordinary things a person can do, and we don't treat it with nearly enough reverence. Agree? Disagree? I want to know. I've sat with people in some of the hardest seasons of their lives, professionally and personally, and what I keep seeing is this. The ones who come out the other side are not the ones who avoided the hard thing. They're the ones who stayed in it long enough to let it change them. There is awe in that, real, substantial awe. And the trouble with things, this is the part that I know sounds strange. And I want to explain it carefully because I don't want to come across as toxic positivity dressed up in this whatever, I don't find awe in suffering because suffering is good. It isn't. Loss is loss. Grief is grief. Betrayal is real. It lands hard. It takes as long as it takes. I'm not interested in telling you that everything happens for a reason because I'm not sure that's true. And I'm certain it isn't helpful to someone in the middle of something terrible. What I'm saying is something different. Took me long enough to find that word in my brain. I'm saying that even in the hardest moments, there's sometimes something underneath the pain, alongside it, not replacing it, that's staggering in its own way. Like the depth of what a person can feel, the ferocity of love that makes grief possible in the first place, right? The specific quiet courage it takes to wake up and try again when you genuinely don't know if you have anything left. I have lived this, and I still find it extraordinary. I always have. And I think that the capacity to hold both at once, this is terrible and this is remarkable, is one of the more underrated things a person can develop. It doesn't minimize the hard thing. It just means you're seeing more of the picture. There's neuroscience behind it, as it happens. Researchers who study awe, and yes, this is a legitimate research field, which I find both validating and quietly hilarious, have found that genuine awe downregulates the threat response. It quiets the part of your brain that's constantly scanning for danger. It induces what some researchers call a small self effect, where your sense of your own concerns temporarily shrinks relative to the larger context that you're perceiving, right? So, it's a very academic way of saying awe gets you out of your own head. And your own head, I say this gently and from personal experience, is not always the best place to be, kids. Okay. The scale of the universe is calming to me, precisely because it means my problems, while real and valid, and sometimes genuinely enormous, are not the organizing principle of everything. The universe has other things going on, and I find that deeply reassuring. Which brings me, finally, to this part of the episode that lives in the same zip code as awe, but has a slightly stranger address. I'm going to set some expectations here because I want to get ahead of where your brain might be going. I'm not a credulous person. I have a background in forensics and criminology. I've spent a significant portion of my professional life looking at evidence and asking questions and interrogating narratives and asking what the most probable explanation is and working methodically from there. I am not someone who sees a weird coincidence and immediately books a past life regression. And yet, there is a category of story I keep encountering through my own life, through people I trust deeply, through listeners of the show, through things I've read, that does not resolve. No matter how many reasonable frameworks I bring to them, they just sit there, strange, specific, and stubborn. I think these stories deserve to be told. I think the people who experience them deserve to be taken seriously. And I think that the appropriate response to them is not to explain them away and not to build a religion around them, but just sit in the and let it be interesting. So this is what the files are. They're real stories. They're unexplained things. There's no clean endings because I don't have any to offer. If you need resolution, I suggest a different podcast from this point on. There are many and they're good, but I'm going to start with my story. I want to tell you about Jesse. Jesse was one of my closest friends in the 90s. He was a couple of months older than me, and he had this quality that I've never quite found in anyone else since. This specific combination of like warmth and mischief that made you feel completely safe and also like you were probably about to get into something. Actually, his brother, who was 14 months older than him, kind of was like this too. So, I mean, they were practically twins. So anyway, he treated me the way that a brother would, right? Jesse did. Playfully, protectively, like I was his to look after, and also his to be slightly annoying too. In equal and apparently non-negotiable measure from my memories, he had a thing he did. If we were sitting together, just hanging out, talking, existing in the comfortable way that you can with people you really know, he would always reach over, come up behind me when I wasn't expecting it, and just grab a tiny piece of hair at the back of my head, just a little tiny bit, and then just give it a quick, small tug, not hard, just enough. The kind of gesture that means I see you and I like you, but I'm going to be a dink and mildly irritating about it. It was just such a Jesse thing to do, right? In 1995, Jesse died, tragically and far too young, the way all of the losses are, the ones that come before they were supposed to, the ones you blame yourself for many, many years after, because I did. I blame myself for his death because of the timing. Anyway, shortly after he died, I started feeling the tug. It wasn't constantly, it wasn't on a schedule I've ever been able to identify, but it happens. Okay, this small, very specific, unmistakable pull at the base of my hair the back of my head, same spot, same pressure, same quality of contact. Now, I know what the rational explanations are. I have a psychology background. I know what grief does to perception and sensory memory. And I know how the brain reconstructs familiar experiences when it's processing loss, right? I've sat with every reasonable explanation available, and I have given them all a fair hearing. But here's the thing. Other people have seen it. Not once, multiple times. People who don't know me well, people who have no knowledge of Jesse or this story or any context for what they're witnessing, they've seen my head move, like jerk, because I'm not expecting it. They've seen my hair shift. Like they've seen it enough to notice, enough to ask, are you okay? Did your hair just, and I say, yes, fine, probably a muscle thing, muscle twitch, I don't know, weird. And I just change the subject. And inside I'm just quiet because I don't know what it is. I'm not going to tell you definitively that my friend who's been gone for over 30 years still occasionally lets me know he's around. I'm also not going to tell you it's nothing because I don't believe that and I'd be lying. What I will tell you, though, it has never once scared me. Not for a single second. It's comfort. It's comforting to me. It feels every time exactly like what it always felt like. Like Jesse seeing me and being slightly annoyed about it. Honestly, I'll take it every time. Now there's another one. This one is really fucking weird. This one came to me from someone I'm close to. I will call him Guy because I need to call him something and it'll do. Guy was in a relationship that ended towards the close of 2019. It ended the way, things end. Not with fire, just kind of a door closing. They went their separate ways, no dramatic finale, just done. And then 2020 happened, which as we all know was perfectly normal and stress-free year for everybody. Guy got on with his life, no contact. That part's important. Zero communication. Not sporadic, not ambiguous, just zero communication. And then just a few months back, Guy's in a conversation with someone through mutual connections, and this person mentions in the offhand way people sometimes detonate a bomb mid-sentence that Guy's ex had told him or told people that she had been in contact with him regularly for a long time after the breakup. Emails, text messages, throughout 2021, 2022, possibly further. Guy had sent none of it. Not one email, not one text. He moved on. Not a single communication of any kind. And this was not a memory issue. This was years of sustained correspondence supposedly from him that he had absolutely no knowledge of. So, Guy being who he is, goes through everything. Every email account, every phone record, every IP log he can access on social media, whatever. He's looking for footprints, evidence that something had been compromised, that someone had gotten in, that there was a trail somewhere. And here's where it gets really unsettling. Whoever did this was careful. That's the word Guy used. Crafty, not a clumsy hack, not something obvious. Someone who was convincing enough to maintain the illusion for years and careful enough not to leave a mess. The theories, as Guy sees them, someone close to her was impersonating him for reasons ranging from well-meaning to deeply strange and disturbing, depending on which version you reach for, or she was constructing the narrative herself, telling people about contact that wasn't real for reasons that make a certain psychological sense if you sit with grief and denial long enough, or something else was happening that neither of them has a box for. Guy leans towards option one. He looks back at their relationship now and sees some things that didn't quite make sense at the time anyway, strange occurrences, moments that fit a pattern he couldn't see while he was standing in it. With this new information, some of those pieces are clicking into place in ways that don't entirely reassure him. He would like to tell her it wasn't him. He has no idea how to find her. He's not sure she'd believe him if he did, and he's not sure he even wants to talk to her ever again. Like, he's moved way past this relationship. What haunts me about this story isn't the deception, unsettling as that is. It's the intimacy required to pull it off. Whoever did this knew Guy well enough to impersonate him convincingly for years, knew about his life, his patterns, his voice. Like what? Like what he would plausibly say. That's not casual intrusion, I don't think. That's someone who is paying very close attention. But to what end? Like, I genuinely don't know. Neither does Guy. She may not know the full truth of it either. She may not even know. This is the thing about the files. They don't close. They just kind of sit there, specific and strange and real, asking these questions that don't have answers yet. Really weird. So this next one came to me from a listener, and I've sat on it for months because I keep thinking I'll find the thread that unravels it for her. And I haven't. She was driving home late one night, a route that she'd driven hundreds of times in her own neighborhood, nothing unfamiliar. And she pulled into what she was certain was her driveway. And she got out of the car and she walked to the front door and she put her key in the lock and the key didn't work. She looked up, same style of house, same color, same layout. Wrong house. Her house was next door. Now, fine, that happens. People are tired, dark houses look alike. Reasonable. Except that she didn't have a neighbor with that style of house. She had lived on the street for 11 years. She knew every house on her block, and the house that she had walked up to, key in hand, was not a house she recognized, except as her own, not the architecture, not the door, not the landscaping. She looked around, she confirmed her street, she confirmed her address on the mailbox next door. She walked to her actual house, and when she turned back to look at where she had just been standing, it was vacant. The house, it was a vacant home. The windows were boarded up. It had been that way for years. She had parked her car in a vacant driveway next to her house and walked up to a door that wasn't really even there. And she told me that she never spoke about it until she heard about the show, and she didn't have a category for it. She still doesn't. Neither do I. I find it extraordinary and weird, and I think she was right to pay attention to it. And she told me that she actually went to the doctor and wasn't sure if she was having seizures or what was going on, and she had psych assessments, and nothing really came of it. So yeah, I think that's kind of weird too. Now, there's another one. This comes from another casual acquaintance of mine. Known this person for a long time, someone who's about as grounded and practical as people come, told me about something that happened to her mom years ago, which her mother only shared once, near the end of her life, because she'd never known what to do with it. So her mom had been going through a very difficult period, not a crisis exactly, but kind of sustained low-grade grief that comes from accumulating loss over time. Right? So she was sitting alone in her kitchen early one morning and she heard her sister's voice, clear as anything. Her sister, who lived several hours away, said her name and then said, and I'm paraphrasing because the exact words aren't mine to share, something that was very specifically comforting. It was addressed to the exact thing her mother had been quietly carrying. And she called her sister that morning. But her sister had no memory of calling. Her mother had believed that this was a phone call that came, and her sister had no memory of calling, and they hadn't spoken in weeks. But when her mother described what she heard, the words and the tone, her sister went quiet for a long time and said, I did think that. I was thinking exactly that about you this week. I just didn't say it out loud. So it wasn't a phone call, and it wasn't a dream. It wasn't a moment of half sleep, broad daylight, fully awake, sitting in a kitchen. That's it. That's what it was. I don't have an explanation. I don't think her mother does. What I know is that she carried it for a long time and it mattered to her. It landed like something true, and I think that counts for something. So I told you at the start that awe and the unexplained are the same doorway. Okay, I want to come back to that now because I think it's the actual center of this whole episode. We live in a culture that is deeply and structurally uncomfortable with not knowing. We want resolution. We want things to make sense so we can file them away and get back to being productive. And when something resists that, when a story doesn't wrap or when an experience doesn't fit, when the evidence points somewhere strange and just kind of stays there, we either dismiss it or we spiral into it, right? Neither response is honest. Neither one is doing the actual work. What awe has taught me, the real practice of it, the daily discipline of looking at the enormous and the tiny and the troubled and choosing to find it remarkable, is that I can hold uncertainty without it destabilizing me. I can look at Jesse's tug and not need it to be categorized. I can look at Guy's story and not need to solve it. I can hear about a woman walking up to a door that wasn't there and just sit with the fact that something happened that I can't explain. I don't get creeped out by creaks in the night or bangs in the night, any of that. I just don't get freaked out by anything, All of this, though, those stories especially, I'm not gullible, It's it's one of the most genuinely useful things a person can develop, this tolerance for ambiguity, right? The ability to stay curious instead of anxious, and to be in a question without demanding an answer. Because what I've noticed about the people who can't do that, they're exhausted. Like, they're just friggin' wiped out. Reality is relentlessly ambiguous, right? It's relentlessly ambiguous. Like, that's it. If you're at war with that, you're going to be in a perpetual losing battle with the actual nature of existence. And the universe, it does not owe you a clean narrative at all, and you're not going to get one from it either. But it offers you something better. It offers you an endless supply of moments like that. If you're paying attention, will stop you in your tracks and remind you that you don't know everything. You don't, and you don't need to. That the picture is bigger than your vantage point, and something is happening here that is stranger and more layered and more interesting than the version you were planning to settle for, right? Jesse taught me that, not by leaving. I don't want him to leave. I didn't want him to leave. I want to be clear about that. But by apparently declining to do so entirely, by continuing to show up in this very specific, slightly irritating, kind of crazy making way, unmistakably Jesse way. Every time it happens, I feel it, not just the tug, but the awe of it. The absolute strangeness and beauty of the fact that I don't know what the fuck is going on, and it doesn't scare me. And I'm paying attention. That's it. That's the whole thing. Pay attention. Hold it loosely. Let the weird be interesting. You'll be okay. You might even be more than okay. So, that's the inaugural edition of the files. And there will be more because there's, always more. If you have a story that belongs here, I want it. You know how to reach me. Show notes, Facebook group, whatever. You know how to reach me. Anything that happened to you or someone you trust, something that kind of resists the reasonable explanation, something that made you stare at the ceiling, send it to me. I mean that without any irony whatsoever. If today's episode gave you something, maybe a thought or a memory that surfaced or a feeling, I don't know, you don't have a name for yet, I'd love to hear that too. You know where to find me. It's all in the show notes. I just told you that. Sheesh. And if you have an episode idea that you want to throw into the universe, send that along as well. I'm still giving away gift cards for submissions that become episodes. Material incentive plus the satisfaction of knowing you contributed to something. That's a solid deal, right? If this show means something to you, anything to you at all, do you care about me at all? Like, seriously, tell one person. That's all I ask. One person who might need it. If you want to support the production costs, the coffee link is in the show notes. Always optional, always will be. I will see you next time. Oh, and Jesse, if you're listening, I see you too.
You've been listening to Unbound, Off Script. The script remains missing. Authorities have been notified. Beth Curry is clocking out, turning off the lights, and pretending she didn't just say all of that out loud. If you want her to do it again on a different topic, let us know. Until next time, stay curious, stay raw, keep it unbound. She's gone.